Wall Street ends higher for the third straight day ahead of midterm elections in the U.S. and the crucial inflation print for October. The Dow Jones Index outperforms yet again. The Street is expecting Republicans to gain ground in one or both chambers of the U.S. Congress. It's a mixed start for stocks in the Asia-Pacific, while the SGX Nifty is indicating a higher start for the Indian market, suggesting an open for the Nifty near the 18,400 mark, a 150-point uptick compared to the Nifty Futures close. And oil prices dip. Brent crude falls to around $95 a barrel as COVID crisis in China worsens. Uncertainty over the outcome of the midterm elections in the United States also adds to the volatility. In key earnings to track, automaker Tata Motors will be reporting second quarter numbers today. Also watch for numbers from Godrej Properties and Lupin. Hi guys, a very good morning and welcome to Power Breakfast. I'm Pavitra Parekh. Those are all of the top headlines that we're tracking for you this morning. So clearly we have a lot to get to as soon as we've come out of that market holiday. But first up, let's take a look at what's happening across the Asian markets. It's quite a mixed start for Asia, but most of the markets are now in the green. You have Taiwan, which is clocking in the biggest gains. It's up 1.3%. The Hang Seng markets also on your screen. So no big moves there, but just around 0.2% higher for the Hong Kong index. The rest of the indices are all in the green, barring just the Japanese market. So the Nikkei is seeing some cuts right now. It's down around 0.3%, but for the rest of the markets, you are seeing gains of between 0.3 to 0.6%. So all in all, quite a positive start for the Asian markets. Let's also bring up the SGX Nifty for you and take a look at this versus the Nifty Futures close that we had. And it is indicating a big near 150-point uptick for our own markets at the start of the trading session. So it looks like the start will definitely be in the green, but let's see how we move from there. The SGX Nifty currently around the 18,400 mark. But with that, let's move on and also talk about the U.S. then. Wall Street ended Tuesday's trading session higher, so the Dow Jones surged over 1%. The S&P 500 was up around 20 points at the close, and the Nasdaq Composite also closed with a gain. It was around 50 points higher. CNBC Seema Modi is here with a wrap of all of the action that played out on Wall Street.
Moderate gains for stocks on this election day. Analysts say expected gains for Republicans in Congress are helping support the market because many investors think gridlock in Washington will limit government spending and make new taxes less likely. The Dow ending up more than 333 points, about 1%. S&P 500 finishing the day with gains or more than 0.5%. Nasdaq closing up by a similar amount. The cryptocurrency markets have been rattled by a major setback for billionaire investor Sam Bankman-Fried and his FTX exchange. Binance, the world's biggest crypto firm, has a non-binding agreement to buy almost all of FTX to rescue it from a liquidity crunch. FTX users rushing in to withdraw funds after the Chinese-Canadian billionaire who runs Binance undermined confidence in FTX. That's the latest here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
All right, Seema, thanks a lot for filling us in with all of the details from Wall Street as well as what's really playing out with the crypto markets. But staying with the U.S., let's also bring you some important opinion that came in from Morgan Stanley's Mike Wilson and Charles Schwab's Liz Ann Saunders. So let's listen into that.
But we do think that tonight's election could be very important in that regard because it looks like the House will go the way of the Republicans. That means gridlock, probably less fiscal spending will be achieved. Maybe that's in the market. We think it may not be in the market, just like when we had the Georgia runoff after the 2020 election, that wasn't in the market and rates went up and we got more fiscal spending. So we think this is an interesting juncture. The CPI is important on Thursday, but we view that more as just an event that has to pass and come because at the end of the day, we think inflation will be lower next year. The peak is in. It's just a matter of pace and timing. And to me, the CPI is just sort of this event that has to come and go. So it's really about tonight. As everybody's been saying incorrectly, we won't know the answers potentially for a couple of days, maybe even a week, because they got to count the mail-in ballots. But directionally, we like to set up here. As far as today's action, as I said, the rates market is behaving better. The dollar's weaker. And the breadth is good. The breadth is actually quite impressive. We've been saying this for a while. Like we're not as bearish as we were at the beginning of the year because we think the 12-month view looks better now than it did 8 months ago. The problem is the path, Sarah. We do think that ultimately this bear market will make new lows. So it's a treacherous path. Okay, like this year we think it's been pretty easy just to have a bearish view and kind of ride it, and that's what we've done. Now it becomes more tactical. Now we have to be more cognizant of these bear market rallies. we're trying to not trying to capture every penny of the bear market, and understand that we want to get long again at some point. So we got to be, disciplined around that.
Well, yeah, I don't know how much of the day's move was tied to the midterm election. There are some seasonals at play here. To some degree, there have been constraints on how much policy, particularly on the spending side, could be done given a 40-year high in inflation. And I think it's difficult on any day to point specifically to what caused the market to do what it did. I think it may have had as much to do with the decline in yields as well as the decline in the dollar. I think those two have really been the day-to-day forces that have been most consistent in terms of market drivers. But I'd throw election-related seasonals in the mix as well. The consensus is 0.6 month over month on the headline and a little bit less than that on the core. I think anything hotter than that would probably be unsettling. That's been the name of the game these days. Not to suggest, though, that if it's better than expected, that's going to be some release valve. The Fed has been very clear that they want to see a series of lower lows. So we're going to need more than just one better than expected print to bring back this notion that the Fed can either step down quickly or move to pivot mode, which we think is still very, very far off. But there's no question that inflation numbers, whether it's CPI, PPI, PCE, they can be market moving if they're outside the consensus.
All right, that is some important opinion coming in on the U.S. inflation data that is expected on Thursday, as well as what the Fed is likely to do. But with that, let's get you the final update on our global market wrap this morning. European markets also ended Tuesday's session higher. So the French CAC index was up 24 points. The German DAX index surged 1%. And the FTSE was quite flat at close with just some marginal gains around 6 points, like you can see on your screen. But Germany's two-year government bond yields hit fresh multi-year highs on Tuesday after the European Central Bank policymaker, as well as President of the German Central Bank, Joachim Nagel, said that the European Central Bank cannot give up on its fight against inflation and that higher interest rates are absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, the ECB's Vice President Luis de Guindos, in a separate address, said that the only way forward is, for policy to reduce aggregate demand, because doing nothing could actually make matters much worse. So that is some interesting updates that we got as far as the European markets go, and that's everything that we're tracking globally. But let's now talk about all of the cues that you should be tracking as we get into a brand new trading session. We have our research team joining in with the trade setup. Rima, Nigel and Bahishta all join us to take us through everything that you should track this morning. Rima, let me come across to you first. It definitely looks like the start will be well in the green, but take us through everything we should watch.
Hi, good morning. As you pointed out, the SGX Nifty is suggesting a gap up opening, which could be to the tune of 150 points when you compare it with Monday's future close on the Nifty. Remember, the US markets have been in an uptrend for the last 3 days. Yesterday as well, we had gains of about 0.5%, extending up to 1% on the Dow Jones. And our own markets, even in Monday's trade, were showing you signs of an up move. So the Nifty and the sensex closed at 10-month highs on Monday. The PSU banks have been outperforming, buoyed by very strong earnings from the mid caps as well as large caps like State Bank of India as well as Bank of Baroda. So all that is positive. Also bear in mind that the FI inflows continue to be very strong. In fact, picking up. The FIs net bought nearly 2,000 crore in the cash market on Monday. They've bought more than 8,000 crore in the month of November itself. The DIIs have been selling, but the selling by the DIIs is less than half of that of the buying of the FI. So net institutional inflows into the market have been more than 1,000 crore for the last 2 days at least. There will be perhaps some wait and watch approach the global markets could take, given that the CPI, the all-important CPI inflation print will be out. So we'll watch for the way the US markets and the global markets play out, because there could be perhaps some amount of pause, but the uptrend in the market seems to be very intact. And today, you've got the support from the global markets as well. Big earnings as well. Tata Motors, Godrej Properties, Lupin, Nalco, Petronet, LNG, just to name a few, should be also tracked as we step into today's trading session. Back to you.
All right, Rima, thanks a lot for putting all of those cues on the table, and that is how the market is likely to move today. But with that, let's also bring Vahishta in and talk about all of the individual stocks that you should track. Vahishta, lots of earnings coming through.
That's right, Pavitra. Lots of earnings, in fact, that have come out in the past 2 days. First is BPCL. The Q2 FY23 results were better than estimates due to one-time subsidy on LPG. The refining segment has also performed better, just like other OMCs. Moving on to Dr. Lal Path Labs, the margins have recovered on a quarter-on-quarter basis, which is a key positive, and this is due to the higher test volumes and improved contribution from Swasth Fit, which is a preventive test. Moving on to Coal India Limited, disappointing numbers coming in due to lower realizations, higher costs, and margins have dipped to 24.4% versus the poll which was expected, so the expectations were much higher at 33.6%. Godrej Consumer Products, lower gross margins again and higher ad spends, which has hurted the EBITDA margins. The volumes dipped 5%. Jubilant Food revenue and EBITDA both have come more or less in line. Good growth in the Domino's store additions at 76. Bajaj Electricals been a weak quarter for the company. Higher inflation, rural stress has led to lower offtake for the consumer products segment, and the market share gains. There have been some good market share gains in the lighting solutions business. Now is at number 3 position versus number 5 position, which was at the end of FY22. For Bosch, the results have been a mixed bag. There has been a strong revenue growth, but the margins were down 50 basis points on a year-on-year basis due to higher material cost and other expenses. A little bit on the insurance segment as well, that the monthly premium numbers were out, so they look decent. Back to you.
All right, that is a long list of stocks, Vahisha, but we're going to keep all of these on our radar today. Finally, let me hand it over to Nigel, who's looking at all of the cues from the futures and options space. Nigel, like Rima was just pointing out, the flows definitely look good.
Well, that's right. The flows look good, Pavitra. And in fact, the big question is, are we going to have a trend day? That is, start off in the green and gradually move up. And it has all the ingredients actually in place. As you said, the flows have looked rock solid. The FIs are showing us all the money. In fact, in the last 8 trading sessions, they bought closer on $2 billion odd, which is pretty good news. Now, in Monday's trading session, we did see the Nifty move up. And there appears there was about a short covering that we saw on the Nifty Futures itself. But on the Nifty Bank, there was fresh buying. And that explains why, in fact, we ended at the high point of the day telling you that the Nifty Bank is bracing for those all-time highs, which will happen today in the first tick itself. On the index futures, what do the FIs do? Well, they added more shorts than longs. They added closer around 2 shorts for every 1 long position, though they continue to remain net long on the index. On the index option side, well, in terms of the FI activity, you're not getting any big Q because they unbound some of those calls and puts that they bought earlier. On the writing side as well, they unbound some of those positions. But 2 strikes were very, very active. One is the 18,300 call. Now, that is the one that's been seeing a lot of writing. So you need to keep an eye out on that one. When we open up in the green, whether you see some unwinding on this position. Now, that will be the first signs that the bears, they're packing their bags and they're getting out. So keep an eye out on that one. On the downside, though, the 18,100 put as well saw a fair bit of addition. So that gives you a sense that we are firmly in an uptrending market, at least as we speak, till that 17,900, 17,950 level holds out. The resistance as well as the support levels come up for you on the screen. It's a good start to trade. We need to catch up what we missed out yesterday. So closer to around 18,350, building onto that is going to be very, very important. As I said, it could be a trend day today. Back to you.
All right, Nigel, Rima, Vahisha, thanks a lot for joining us. So definitely looks like we'll have a good start, but let's see how the market moves from there. That is everything that you should track as we get into a fresh trading session. But with that, we're going to slip into our first short break on the show. When we come back, it's all about earnings. It was a weak showing for Godrej Consumer, while Tata Motors is in focus ahead of its numbers today. So we'll bring you all of the details when we come back. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast, and it's going to be a lot about some individual names that we could track today. We did get earnings from Godrej Consumer. So Mangalam is joining us to fill us in with how the quarter looked this time around. Mangalam, quite a weak showing this time.
It is a weak showing for Godrej Consumer this time. In fact, the street was bracing for a weak quarter because the company had directed so in their second quarter update. But looks like on the operational front, the numbers are weaker than what the street was working with. So let's take you through the numbers itself. The revenues, they were largely in line with expectations, just under 3,400 crores versus our poll of 3,400 odd crores itself. But the EBITDA and the margins missed street estimates, and the net profit came in much below street expectations. In fact, 359 crore versus an expected number of upwards of 400 crores. The volumes, dipped by about 5%. The street was working with a 5 to 6% contraction itself. Why is it that the margins missed? One, we had the gross margins, which were low by almost 200 basis points, and that's primarily because of raw material inflation. And secondly, the company is, upfronting its ad spend. So the ad spends as a percentage of sales have actually increased by about 240 basis points at 8.4%. This compares with 6% same quarter last year. In terms of geographies, weakness in Indonesia continues as the company had guided for. Africa revenue grew well, but at the same time, the margins took a sharp knock because of higher marketing spends. And India, in light of that, has been relatively stable. What does the company say about the future? They're saying that inflation pressures are abating. We expect recovery in consumption and gross margins. However, whatever savings that they will get, they will, invest that in marketing. So to that extent, the company's guidance on the margin band as well as recovery in volumes in the second half will be extremely crucial. For today, expect the stock to see a bit of a knock.
All right, expect the stock to see a bit of a knock. Mangalam, thanks a lot for taking us through the fine print on Godrej Consumer. The stock anyway this year has been quite weak. It's down around 15%. But with that, let's talk about the key earning to track today. Automaker Tata Motors will be reporting second quarter numbers. So Sonia is here to tell us what we can expect. Sonia, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for that. So for Tata Motors, it's expected to be a good set of earnings this time, led by a low base, improving chip availability for the JLR business, as well as a pickup in the production numbers and an improving trend in the passenger vehicle business. So overall, if you look at the core numbers, we're expecting a revenue growth of 32% at 81,366 crores. The EBITDA will more than double. As I said, the base was very low same time last year. So expect a good jump in EBITDA. The operating leverage has also improved because of a fall in raw material prices. So the margins are expected to surge to 10.2% versus 6.6% same time last year. And the Tata Motors had posted a loss same time last year to the tune of over 4,400 crores. We're expecting them to return to profitability this time around. Now, both the businesses, passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles, have done quite well in the domestic part, and Jaguar Land Rover has also improved. So JLR volumes have gone up 30% year on year at 102,000 units, and their India business passenger vehicle volumes, led by a strong showing in the electric vehicle space, is up by almost about 70% year on year. The commercial vehicle volumes have also improved substantially, and the margins for the India business will go up because of the price hikes that were undertaken as well as the operating leverage. Overall, the margins will definitely improve also because what happened in China is that there was a higher number of sales compared to what we saw last year for Jaguar Land Rover, and hence, since the geographical mix has improved and China is a high margin vertical, JLR's overall margins will also look much better than what they saw same time last year. So good set of numbers expected, but more commentary awaited from the management later in the evening.
All right, Sonia, thanks a lot for taking us through all of those expectations from Tata Motors. But next, let's shift focus and talk about the commodities space as well. And as always, we have Manisha joining us to fill us in with the update. Manisha, good morning. What are you tracking today?
Morning, Pavitra. I'm looking at the precious metal prices, and what a bright sparkle there. If you look at the silver prices, they are trading at a 4-month highs. Gold is trading at a 1-month highs, and overnight we've seen very strong gains come in for all of those precious metal prices. Well, the US dollar declined to 1.5-month lows really seems to be doing the trick, and then the investors are assessing inflation and rate hike expectation, and there's a 67% probability now of a 50 basis point rate hike in the month of December, and that clearly has been supportive not just for precious metals, but the base metal prices also seem to be taking cue from that. So you have copper prices trading at a 2-month high. Aluminum also has taken support as smelters in Henan, Shandong are planning capacity cuts of around 2 lakh tons. So supply tightness, decline in US dollar really seem to be supporting commodities.
All right, Manisha, thanks a lot for getting us that roundup from what's happening in the world of commodities. But on that note now, let's also bring you some a word that we got from India's External Affairs Minister, who met his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow yesterday to discuss the country's ties. And he also spoke about India's procurement of oil from Russia. So let's listen into a few of those comments.
First of all, there is a stress on the energy markets. Okay, this is a stress which has been created by a combination of factors, but as today the world's third largest consumer of oil and gas, a consumer where the levels of income are not very high, it is our fundamental obligation to ensure that the Indian consumer has the best possible access on the most advantageous terms to international markets. And in that respect, quite honestly, we have seen that the India-Russia relationship has worked to advantage. So if it works to my advantage, I would like to keep that going.
All right, that is the word coming in from the External Affairs Minister. But with that, we're going to get into another short break on the show. When we come back, we'll get you the latest on the results of the US midterm elections, which start coming through. So stay tuned for more. Hey guys, welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast, and let's now bring you some important updates from the US midterm elections as the first polls begin to close. Florida voters re-elected Republican Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio on Tuesday, and according to projections by NBC News, so exit polls now show that inflation and abortion top the list of voter concerns in the closely watched polls. NBC's Alice Barr filed this detailed report earlier.
It's the voters' turn in the spotlight.
I'm so excited to be voting.
I'm feeling a little nervous.
I'm standing on the shoulders of many ancestors.
I'm pro-choice, so that's important for me.
For me, security is number one.
Candidates have made their closing arguments and cast their ballots, along with the biggest names in each party. With the balance of power on the line, voters are calling this a pivotal election.
Hugely important.
Republicans need to gain just 5 seats to take control of the House, and only 1 in the Senate, where 9 races are considered competitive. The GOP is expecting big gains in the House. President Biden hitting the phones today after acknowledging overnight his agenda could be in jeopardy.
The Democrats win the House.
I think it's going to be tough, but I think we can.
Former President Trump rallying for Republicans in Ohio overnight and setting the stage to announce his own 2024 presidential bid.
I'm going to be making a very big announcement on Tuesday, November 15th at Mar-a-Lago.
With tensions high across the country and some candidates already casting doubt on election results, U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies are on alert for potential security threats, leading to voter anxiety.
It's a little unnerving, you know. I just hope that the country and people can come to their senses and be reasonable.
Now the waiting begins, and with absentee ballots being counted and legal challenges already underway, this midterm election day could stretch into weeks.
All right, that is the latest on the US midterm elections. We're going to keep bringing you updates on this through the day as well. But with that, let's move on and also bring you some unfortunate news. At least 6 people have been killed and several injured as a 6.3 magnitude earthquake hits Nepal. Dozens of houses have also been damaged as 2 earthquakes in the last 24 hours triggered landslides in various parts of the Dhoti district. So the Nepal army personnel have also been sent to the affected areas for search and rescue operations. Strong tremors were in fact also felt in Delhi and the NCR region at around 2 a.m. So that's an important update, and we will bring you more on the rescue operations when we do have details. But with that, we're going to wind down on this edition of Power Breakfast. Thank you very much for tuning in. Bazaar Morning Call is up next.